Oh, we are back with the Chatterbox Bearcats midweek show, and the midweek show crew is back. I'm the host, Nick Niehaus. Eric Lilly joining me, running it back from last season, starting a fresh new season. Got the football season starting up here in a few weeks, and joining us, a very, very special guest, Dalton Wasserman from the PFF College Football Show and the PFF NFL Show. But of course, we're talking college football today, talking about the preseason rankings, reviews for the Cincinnati Bearcats, where the analytics have our beloved Cats and what we think about that pretty much. So, thanks for joining us, Dalton. Very special guest. I'm particularly excited to hear all the analytics because I'm somebody who just sees the game and I'm a big eye test guy. So I love hearing all the numbers behind stuff. I know this is right up Lily's avenue when it comes to the grades and everything. So thanks for joining us.
Oh, yeah, no problem. Look, it's really exciting for the season, first of all, to be just over a week away now. And obviously, the Bearcats have a huge game starting out at Arrowhead Stadium against Nebraska. I think week 0 and week 1 is going to be as much fun as we've seen in a long time. It's a great way. It's a stacked first couple weeks to start our season. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, it surely is. I'm very excited about that. We'll get into that later. But first, I want to talk about the good. There hasn't been a lot of it in Nippert Stadium in the past couple of years. Obviously, we are in year 3 of the Scott Satterfield era. And so my first question, I'll lead things off. When it comes to anybody that Cincinnati fans should be excited about outside of Dante Corleone, right? Everybody knows the Godfather. Everybody knows what he can do. It's somehow he keeps coming back to Clifton. But is there anybody that maybe is sticking out analytically when it comes to who we should be excited for this year?
I'm going to give you 2 guys, and actually Dante Corleone is obviously the face of the defense and obviously the run defense. I think this run defense is arguably the best part of this team, but they've got really good run defenders at all 3 levels of their defense. Start at linebacker with Jake Golday. He was the 3rd highest graded linebacker in the Big 12 last season and one of just 4 Power 4 linebackers to have an 80 PFF grade in both run defense and coverage, right? He didn't get maybe the full complement of snaps, but he certainly got enough to make an impact last year after transferring up from the FCS level. He's a really good player at linebacker, really balanced player, good athlete who's always on the ball. And then a guy on the 3rd level, Antoine Peak, the safety, one of the best run defenders in the country, an elite 90 run defense grade. I think it's not just Dante Corleone. Obviously, he's the heart and soul of it, and it's going to be great to see him coming into a season healthy after missing summer practice last year and not getting into a couple weeks into the season. You've got really good run defenders at all 3 levels. I think the foundation of this Bearcat team is going to be to run and stop the run, and they're really well equipped in run defense to do that.
Yeah, and anything on offense. I listened to your guys' show, and I know that the offense, from what I heard from you, is that maybe we're going to struggle, right? I have my opinions on the offense last year when it came to the wide receiving crew. We made it very clear on this program that I didn't think it was necessarily Brendan Sorsby struggling. More so, he just didn't have any guys open. I mean, he even said it in a Big 12 clip on Twitter where he was breaking down film, and he's like, yeah, so right here, obviously we had nothing open on this play. And I'm like, yeah, that clearly makes sense, because I don't think, all the list of 5'9" wide receivers we had last year, I'm not going to say they weren't any good, but I don't think they necessarily created separation for us. A whole new wide receiving core. I know that you guys said that that's something that is going to be a tough, adjustment this year, having all brand new guys for Brendan Sorsby. It's something that I'm kind of excited about, honestly. How do you see that wide receiving core, heading into grading into the season? Anything particularly on the offense?
So I think it was in need of a makeover. We're just going to have to see if it works. And I think the idea is that they need those receivers to be explosive, because Brendan Sorsby, the one thing he really doesn't have is the most explosive arm when it comes to throwing vertically, right? He usually works to the chains. He wants to get in that 3-step drop and throw on time. So I think you're talking about adding speed to this receiving core and guys who might be able to win after the catch, right? It's just a matter of who is going to adjust to this level of competition, right? Caleb Goody coming from Colorado State. He's got speed, but he didn't get a ton of volume last year. Jeff Caldwell, a 1,000-yard season at Lindenwood last year, but that's also jumping from Lindenwood, an FCS program, to a Big 12 program, right? Then you're talking about a guy like Cyrus Allen, who was good at Louisiana Tech, struggled a bit at Texas A&M last year, fell out of favor. So they're really trying to scratch and claw for options at wide receiver. But I think the key was adding speed and adding after the catch ability, because if there's one thing there is, I think the more obvious weakness to me about Brendan Sorsby is he's not going to push the ball well downfield too often. He's going to be accurate underneath, and he's got to let these receivers work underneath. But they need to separate first. I'm with you. When I was going over the tape again in preparation for this first game against Nebraska, I thought Cincinnati really struggled to separate last year when teams went and gotten man-to-man coverage. That could be an issue again this year if none of these guys step up.
Yeah, Dalton, I got a question for you too. I watched your podcast on the Cincinnati preview. By the way, Bearcats fans, check it out. I tweeted it on the Bearcat Bunch, or we'll put it in the show notes. But general thoughts, and it's not just you guys, but a lot of podcasts out there, that 6.5 number for Cincinnati. There's a lot of anchoring onto that. You're seeing a lot of 5-7, 6-6, 7-5 predictions. I honestly don't think I've seen one person predict anything other than those three. And so my question is, like, for Cincinnati to hit a realistic ceiling, like let's say the realistic ceiling is 9 wins. Do you think the Bearcats can do that if Royer is the number one target for Sorsby? Or do you think there has to be like a receiver, a wide receiver that just comes out of that group you just mentioned and is like a clear number one?
The way that their offense works, and it's okay if Royer is their best pass catcher. I don't have any issue with that, and he certainly projects to be that right now. But the way their offense works with the RPO game, and a lot of times some of Sorsby's favorite throws are deep outside to the numbers when he gets that press man coverage and he can throw those go balls outside. They need at least one guy who is able to separate on the outside, right? They can find somebody who can win after the catch and at least keep moving the chains in those RPO concepts. But there are times when they need to be able to back off that press man coverage, and somebody, if it's Jeff Caldwell at 6'5" with the speed he has, fine. If it's Caleb Goody with the speed he has, somebody has to be able to beat press man coverage, and I think be able to threaten it deep. And also that comes with, again, Brendan Sorsby has to throw it deep down the field too. Over the last 4 seasons across his Cincinnati play and his games at Indiana, he has the lowest big-time throw rate for us. Those are our highest-graded throws of any quarterback with at least 700 dropbacks, right? So you're talking about generally those throws are vertically down the field. He's got to make more of those, but he also has to have somebody to separate. So they are going to need 1 or 2 guys, I would say, especially one to get vertical and one to win after the catch in those RPO concepts. And then you really start talking about a well-rounded passing game.
Yeah, and on that note, real quick, Nick. Sorry, Nick.
You're good.
Cover 3 podcast, I listened to that one as well. Bud Elliott mentioned that like Satterfield's offenses over his career, the best ones have that, his classic zone run game, right? But they also have these speedy receivers running down the field, like the ones that they have the big play. And Satterfield always talks about big plays. And the last 2 years, he's talked about how we just haven't had those explosive plays. So like you just said, I still go back and forth on this. Like if we really need a true wide receiver one, or if like all 3 could pepper in there, a couple big catches every few weeks. But it really feels like it's got to start with the O-line and the run game to help Sorsby unlock that deep ball. And do you think Tawee Walker can replicate what Kiner did?
It's going to be close because Corey Kiner, I'll tell you what, he was a lot of fun to watch. And I know he went undrafted, but he signed with the right team in the 49ers that run a similar system, especially in the run game. He was a lot of fun to watch. What I think is it should be a combination of him and Evan Pryor. I think there could be more of a thunder and lightning kind of combo where I know, Kiner obviously carried the vast majority of the load last year, but Walker I think he's listed at 218 pounds. He brings a lot of power. He sheds tackles that way. And I really like Evan Pryor's feet and his vision, especially when he gets to the second level. So I think you could see this be a little more of a dual threat in the backfield instead of just one guy like Corey Kiner last year carrying the load. And we have to remember Brendan Sorsby, too, is an occasional rushing threat himself. So you've got 3 capable runners in the backfield. It wouldn't shock me if none of them individually were as good as Corey Kiner, but the fact that you have that level of diversity in the backfield and different types of players, I would use Evan Pryor a lot more. I think Walker's going to get the majority of the carries as the veteran with more experience at 2 different, now going into his third different school now. But I think they're both really good and they could complement each other really well.
Yeah, a couple of those guys you mentioned off the rip when talking about some players that we should be excited about. They were all here last year with Jake Golday, Corleone, and Antoine Peak. Is there any transfers coming in, any freshmen? I know freshmen, it's like not even a thing anymore playing. I mean, unless you're obviously high 5-star, which obviously Cincinnati didn't get any this year or in years past, but we're a transfer school, right? That's kind of what we're hanging our hat on, which is fine. Any transfers coming in? I look at Joe Cotton. I look at Matthew McDoom. Those are two guys that I'm particularly excited about. Would Matthew McDoom be the number one transfer coming in that you think that we should kind of look after? I know that the secondary last year obviously wasn't a strength of this team. I see him coming in, and everybody's really high on him.
Yeah, no, McDoom was fantastic the last couple of years at Coastal Carolina. His coverage grades either right at or just below 80, which is really good for a 2-year starter down there. He's a good football player. I'll be honest with you. I think he's going to be a very important player too. When you talk about the structure of Tyson Vite's defense and coming from Iowa State and basically running the same defense now that Iowa State does, those types of defenses with those 3-man fronts, they're really built from the back forward. So a shutdown corner like McDoom is extremely important. If you watch Iowa State the last really several years now with Matt Campbell, they're cycling in constantly NFL level defensive backs. They're covering first. So they're not always going to be the most productive pass rush team, but having a lights out guy like McDoom on the outside, that is my number one guy in this transfer class for Cincinnati because of the talent level and how good he's been at Coastal Carolina the last 2 years and how important he's going to be to their secondary. This is a defense where the better you can cover, the better your entire defense is going to be because they're not just the way it's structured. They're not going to have an elite pass rush with sending 3 defensive linemen, and that's it. So often they have to be able to cover. McDoom gives them some improvement at corner.
Lily, going over to you. I know you want to get into some analytics, some grades. I know that's up your alley. I just use it when in arguments when somebody says, "Hey, this guy stinks. This guy's really good." I'm like, "Well, PFF. Hey, I don't know. I don't know. Let's check the PFF grade."
One of my favorite tools of PFF is just the snap count. Because when you're at a game as a season ticket holder, it's like, you have a couple beers, you're watching the game. It's really hard to track snaps. Like you'll see a guy out there and then just forget he didn't play in the second half. Then you find out on the message board 6 hours later that there's like a little injury or something. So I love looking at the snap counts. But I'm going to skip the PFF rating for a quick defensive question here because you mentioned Iowa State and I got distracted because Cincinnati is running that 3-3-5 and Vite, Heacock. It feels common in the Big 12. Like it almost Iowa State started it and a lot of people are like, "What? That's working out. Let's go for it." And with those systems, you typically don't see as many sacks. For instance, Iowa State had 7 sacks last year. Jared Bartlett had 7.5. And mind you, Cincinnati was one of the worst teams at sacking the quarterback in the Big 12. So our best sacker was more than Iowa State's entire team. In terms of UC's defense, we've had a lot of turnover here, new guys coming in. One of the biggest concerns I see on Twitter and forums right now is the lack of a pass rusher, like a true pass rusher with Bartlett gone. Do you think we have to do you think we can just replicate this Iowa State thing and be one of the top defenses in the Big 12 without sacking the quarterback and just kind of up in the defensive back production? Because last year we only had 3 interceptions. So it's like that's kind of where it has to change, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is a defense that when you're talking about sacking the quarterback, it's just not the highest priority, right? And the funny part is that the 2 teams that played in the Big 12 title game, Iowa State and Arizona State, they had 2 of our 3 lowest pass rush grades as a team in the regular season, right? So obviously you would love to have a great pass rush, but especially in the case of Iowa State and Cincinnati, it's just not structured like that because college football, it's so spread out. And, you got teams in 10 personnel, teams I think about like Colorado and TCU constantly with 4 receivers on the field. These defensive coordinators have just decided, look, we need to be able to cover. We still need to be able to be gap sound in the run game. And the 3-3 does present some problems when it comes to running stunts and blitzing linebackers and not always knowing where guys are coming from. And even adjusting that 3-man line can make it tough, right? Like you see Iowa State the last couple of years has had success stopping some of the heavier running teams in the Big 12. But it's just, I know it's frustrating. It can be frustrating at times to watch, especially against, certain matchups against really good quarterbacks. I go back to the Colorado game last year with Shedeur Sanders, where it's just He's not pressured at all because naturally this defense, so often they only send 3 guys. So it's frustrating, but I get the idea of it is you want to build a defense from the back forward. That's why they focus so heavily on the secondary in the transfer portal. So do I think if you run this right, and we've seen this with Iowa State, do you necessarily need a great pass rusher? Not necessarily. Is it good? Is it obviously good to have? Like when Iowa State had Will McDonald, they certainly weren't complaining about having a guy like that, right? If you can find one of those edge defenders, especially that you can widen out a little bit and send him one-on-one, cool. But I think as far as the team pass rush stats, it's just a defense that's not designed to lead the nation in sacks or anything like that.
Do you think Dante Corleone and like Dominique Orange, like, do you think that's interesting that Iowa State and Cincinnati have those guys, like the 2 best, like in terms of the 3-3-5, is that like imperative that you have that guy in the middle?
I'll tell you, absolutely, because even whether it used to be, the 3-4 that used to be so much more common in the NFL, or even when I was coaching high school, I faced defenses that ran a similar type of system here. And the most frustrating thing is just when you have that guy right over the center that even your double team can't take care of, it's a problem. It makes it really hard to run right in the teeth of that defense. And when those guys are, especially the nose guard on the inside, when they're occupying 2 of those interior blockers, then your linebackers are running free. So it's not always, those are 2 of the best players in the country, honestly, both Corleone and Orange, but it's because they make the rest of their defense better, the rest of that front 6 better. So it is a necessity, and it's a necessity for all 3 of those guys up front, especially in run defense, to be really good, just because it's a numbers game, right? And there's less of them. They have to be able to hold their ground, but that nose tackle position is really important.
All right, I'm going to be honest here. We are talking about a team that has a 6.5 game over under. Like, we have had better days in Clifton. What are we missing? What is the Cincinnati football program missing right now to get over that hump? Because like maybe it's just all of the Big 12. Because you look at the Big 12 and it's nobody knows what's going to happen. Just like nobody knew what was going to happen last year. It just seems like a lot of teams who are pretty similar. So what are we missing here in Clifton? I know this is a pretty broad statement. It could just be like, well, I don't know, star quarterback, right? But like there's something to it, because you look at some of our players and it's like, I think Sorsby can be a superstar. I think Joe Royer is going to be a superstar. And I think Corleone is going to be a superstar. Like what is it that we are still stuck at this 6.5 games under the Satterfield era?
I firmly believe it's exactly what you mentioned. Scott Satterfield said earlier. It's explosive plays, especially in the passing game. And look, is Sorsby a solid player? Yes, but he's not necessarily an explosive player, a guy who creates downfield. You look at all the teams that had the lowest scoring offenses last year in the Big 12. Houston, major quarterback problems. Cincinnati, they struggle creating explosive plays, especially down the stretch last season. Utah had a horrendous quarterback situation last year. Oklahoma State was a mess at quarterback last year. West Virginia had their starter in and out of the lineup. So you look at all those teams, look, football at any level, if you have something of a disadvantage at quarterback. Now, I like Sorsby better than some of those other situations I just mentioned, especially last year, but it's still not explosive. I mentioned how he's had one of the lowest big time throw rates in the country over, across his career, both at Indiana and Cincinnati. You just don't see a whole lot of vertical in this offense. So when the run game at times is not going well, and when teams just decide they're going to press up and start blitzing the Bearcats, they don't make them pay for it. That's what's missing to me, is that the more explosive passing game that you had with Desmond Ridder back in the day, with Alec Pierce back in the day, with those deep balls, right, when they were creating explosive plays to complement the run game. That, to me, is it. It's the balance. This team can run. They can stop the run. I do think the coverage is going to be a bit better, especially with the structure of this defense, but you have to be able to at least be on even ground with most of the teams in your conference at quarterback and at wide receiver. Look, again, it's not just Sorsby, but on the whole, the passing game, like Satterfield said, it's not explosive enough. They need that this year.
Is Lily, go ahead, because I'm still hung up on the wide receiving core from last year. Because I like Sorsby, and I think if you talk to a lot of UC fans, they have that same testament. Like
we thought Sorsby was hurt.
Maybe I'm a Sorsby apologist. I don't know, Lily. What do you think?
I thought Sorsby was hurt down the stretch, and then just usually at the end of the season, immediately you start hearing the leaks that he was hurt. Like, just because you don't want to make an excuse during the season, and it never happened. It seems like what happened was we had a bunch of 5'9" wide receivers who were not fast enough to get open before Sorsby got in trouble, and it kind of like teams figured us out. Satterfield mentions that Colorado game a lot. because of their man. I think he said their man defense, the way their DBs play, it just gave us fits. Like the way we just could not get space. And our running game is good, but it's not dynamic enough to make up for that. So that's what I'm choosing to believe. I don't know if that's not like 100% of it, obviously, but I do think we made a mistake in the portal last year going for all those small wide receivers that didn't have like the speed to match the size, if that makes sense. And they did switch the approach this year. Now, none of these guys are proven, but Caleb Goody, Cyrus Allen, and Jeff Caldwell are all like freaky in their own way in terms of speed or size. Especially Jeff Caldwell. He looks like he was made in a lab to play wide receiver, but we still need some depth there too. You know, like what if one of those guys goes down? Like there's stuff that's concerning, like wide receiver and offensive line. If we have a guy or two go down, I'll be pretty nervous. But I'm going to transition this into my next question. This is a PFF specific question on special teams. Like when you guys are doing, like Cincinnati had a disaster last season on special teams. Like it cost us games. It cost us games 2 years ago. We did move on from Kerry Combs, a Cincinnati legend, and hired a couple new coaches that kind of share the role, and also have a new kicker, Steven Rusnak, and punter, Mason Fletcher's brother, Max, and a new long snapper who snapped to Max at Arkansas, Eli Stein. When you're grading like a punter, what do you look for? Like, because obviously you want to down it as close as possible, but there's so many different situations. Like, can you use your own judgment on what they were trying to accomplish with each punt, or is that not up to you?
So we actually, the punting grading is one of the most, I would say, mechanical things that we have. Somebody, I forget who it was, but a while back, they basically created the formula for us when it comes to punter grading. And it's a combination of distance and hang time and location. So I think that last one is the one that creates the most argument, but also on those shorter punts, like you mentioned, like if you can get the coffin corner near the sideline down inside the 10, then you're talking about a good punt. So it's, it's a way, I think, to have it where, because it used to be that just like, punting average and net punting average was the only stats we had for punters. Our grading takes into account if you have a high average hang time as a punter, let's say 4.8 or even something close to 5 seconds, somewhere in there, you're going to get higher grades with consistently high hang time. The idea is not just to punt it as far as you can. The idea is to give the returner as little chance as possible to return it, right? And you think about, Brett Thorson from Georgia, was it last year or the year before, where he didn't have a single punt return all season. And I think he was one of our one or two highest graded punters in the nation, right? So that's the idea. If you can, the perfect punt in theory is a 60-yard punt with 5 seconds of hang time right on the sideline. That's what you're talking about when you're talking about the perfect punt, because it is far, it does have great hang time, and it gives that the punt returner only a one-way go. Whereas you could boot it 60 yards, but if there's only 3.5 seconds of hang time and it's right in the middle of the field, right? You talk about sometimes out kicking your coverage. It's a combination of all of it. So we do have kind of like, I want to say it's an equation sort of thing that goes into that in our system. It's probably one of, again, the most mechanical things we do that we don't have a ton of subjective judgment on. It's that this is the location, this is the hang time, this is the distance. And again, for shorter kicks, for like say if you're punting at your opponent's 45 and you're just trying to pin them deep, that does get taken into account. So the distance isn't going to be as big as factor because we know we can punt at 35, 40 yards, but then it comes down to hang time and location, and you'll actually get downgraded if you just boot it straight into the end zone.
And so Cincinnati, we've seen, like, as Cincinnati fans, we've seen the best special teams players and some bad special teams. Like recently, these last 2 years, they have cost us games. We would have been in a bowl game last year if we covered well against Pittsburgh on a punt. And in 2008, we had Kevin Huber. Like that. Like to me, I was in college at that point. That's when I discovered how important a punter was. Like on that Brian Kelly team, it was just unbelievable. Our defense was crap, but we kept winning that position battle with Kevin Huber. And then the last 2 years, the opposite. So like, what are you guys? How are your grades coming in on the new kicker and new punter we got here? Is it? Do you think we can hope that we won't like swing down a game this year because of it?
Well, I'll tell you this. I'll start with the younger Fletcher now that's coming in from Arkansas, and he redshirted last year. I had to dig into some stats for this just to see how good he was, and he was actually fantastic in his 2 years at Arkansas, 2022 and 2023. Across those 2 seasons, he was the second highest graded punter in the country, behind Alabama's James Burnip. He was doing a fantastic job at Alabama, and obviously he wanted to come up here to Cincinnati with his brother and all of that. But I'll tell you what, that's a major upgrade if you're getting that guy. I know he didn't punt it all last year, but rust isn't necessarily something I worry about with punters, especially when they're 21 years old, so I'm not worried about that. No, he was one of the elite punters in the nation for 2 years at Arkansas, so you're upgrading there. And then the new kicker coming in from Charlotte, I believe he was the only kicker who attempted more than 5 field goals last year, who made all of them. So he's got the accuracy part to him. I think it was 11 for 11 last year. That's all you're really looking for in college. Look, is it great to have a guy who can boom at 60 yards and has the NFL legs? Sure. But in college, there's so many teams that don't even have a reliable kicker under 45 or even 40 yards, that if you're getting a guy who's just accurate, I would say within 45, especially for this type of team that, like you mentioned, field position is important. Ball control is important. Time of possession. With the defense that they have in the run game they have, I think they're going to be looking to shorten games. A lot of times, man, kicking that 42-yard field goal from the left hash, if you have a kicker that can make that, that is an advantage over some teams. We've seen teams. Notre Dame had a shaky kicker situation last year until the playoff. Ole Miss, has had some issues with that. Auburn, that was the reason they didn't make a bowl game either. Was Auburn? They couldn't find a kicker to save their life, right? So, among other things. But I mean, you talk about those 2 things being so important for a team like this that wants to run it and stop the run and control the tempo of the game. Special teams is so important because, like you mentioned, 1 or 2 mishaps on special teams can turn a whole game upside down.
Now let's talk about the season as a whole. I already referenced it. Our over-unders at 6.5 wins. I'm just going to spoil it. I'm pretty sure you took us on the under, right? So I'm curious, just your general thoughts on our season, our schedule, kind of what our outlook looks like. I know we talked about each, all the specific sides of the football, offense, defense, special teams. I'm curious your thoughts as a whole.
Yeah, I'm sitting on the under because I'm not sure again on their passing game, right? And I'm very curious. I know it's not a ranked game or one of the biggest games of week 1, but I'm so curious to see how they come out against Nebraska because I think that's going to tell us a lot. If they come out physical and heavy-handed and playing the way they want to play, they can absolutely go to Arrowhead and win that game. And if they do, that changes my perception a little bit because I think Nebraska is going to be pretty good also. But the Big 12 is so hard right now because it's so wide open. It's the most wide open conference in the country. And it feels like there's so many 50-50 games, right? I look at their schedule and I go, when they play Kansas, that feels 50-50 to me. Like, I don't know what Jalen Daniels I'm going to get. I don't really know what Brendan Sorsby I'm going to get sometimes in the passing game, right? It's a game like that. It's a game like Baylor. There's a lot of people hyping up Baylor. Are they for real? I'm expecting a bounce back from Utah, but that's not guaranteed till we see them do it, right? So BYU, and they're going to start a true freshman at quarterback right now. So that's been announced today. There's so many 50-50 games that I could really, for so many teams in the Big 12, see it going either way. The big thing for me, again, is that a lot of weeks until we see it proven further, especially with this wide receiver core, I do think there are disadvantages in the passing game. When I look at other teams, Kansas can throw the football. That week 1 against Nebraska, I think they're going to be better throwing the football with new receivers. Iowa State with Rocco Becht. I think Devin Dampier in Utah is going to be really good. TCU can really throw the football, right? So if they can play their style of game, and I think the idea, again, is going to be run the football, get ahead early, be the more physical team, they can go over that. Quarterback situation and passing game situation is one of the first things that I look at when it comes to head-to-head matchups, but there's a lot of 50-50 games. Honestly, it's a tough project. I think that 6.5 number is probably just about right when it comes to projecting out the whole season right now.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I think this is the most excited I've ever been for a football season for a team that's not projected to do very well, just because the conference does seem absolutely wide open. And like you said, I do think we have a ton of 50-50 games. So I definitely like what you had to say there. Now, Lily, I'm curious your thoughts. Now, we are at Chatterbox Bearcats going to have a full season breakdown here in a couple weeks, but me and Lily, we haven't talked in months. So I don't even know what you're thinking at all. Like, what do you think? What do you have us at 6.5? I mean, I kind of tend to agree with Dalton. I'm kind of, I don't know. I like Sorsby, but like he said, I need to see how we play against Nebraska. And I feel like I just took the words out of your mouth.
So every offseason, I kind of make my own strength of schedule metric for the Big 12 since, I mean, it's only been a couple, right? But it is a stupid project that I just like doing. Because I do think for like gambling over unders, it's fun to like to me, I had Utah in my playoff, and then I looked at their schedule and I just started rethinking everything. Like they play every team I have as a tier 1 team in the Big 12. They play all of them. And a couple are on the road too. And while I think Utah's the second best team, I'm not sure they're going to make it to Arlington with how this conference is. So just breaking down our schedule, I only see that one loss. And I believe the PFF shows mentioned that, that at Utah game, it's like the one where you can be like, yep, that's a loss. And you have a lot of 50-50s, 55, 45s. But the reason why I like over 6.5 for Cincinnati is the teams I'm down on are on our schedule. I'm down on Kansas. I am very down on Iowa State compared to most people. Iowa State, to me, I wanted to hire Matt Campbell. I got a lot of flack for that. I think he's a really good coach, and he builds that program exactly how it needs to be built to reach their potential, which he did. They won 10 games. They've never done that before. They are a developmental program, and they just lost the most talent they've ever had in one offseason. So just in my head, as much as I think Rocco Beck's a good quarterback, in my head, they just lost so many guys that I'm bearish on them. We play them at home as well. So those two games, I think they're a little more in our favor than people realize. And then we also have that Arizona game at home, UCF at home. BYU, that quarterback, Retzlaff leaving, kind of moved the needle for me. We get BYU at home. Baylor. I'm high on Baylor, but they play at TCU the week before they play at Cincinnati. We're the only team in the Big 12 that doesn't play a team off of a bye. Like, there's just a lot of things that I think are in our favor. I just hope we have good enough players to take advantage of it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'll be honest with you. You look at this big, and the reason it's so wide open is because every team has some flaw you can point to and go, I don't know, right? Like I think the four tier 1 teams to me in this conference right now are Arizona State, the defending champs. Texas Tech has a boatload of talent. I could talk about Texas Tech all day. They got a boatload of talent, but I don't know necessarily that Baron Morton can get it done in big situations. Kansas State is Kansas State. They're always going to be good. When they fall behind in games, they have issues because they can't drop back and throw the football. And then I think Utah is going to make that jump. Mm-hmm. And the one big thing about, and a part of the reason I would mention that Utah game is until really last year, and there was some tight games, Utah just never loses at home. It's one of the best home field advantages in college football, especially if they have at least a functional quarterback situation. I really like Devin Dampier, but I could go through every team in this conference. You mentioned BYU now. They're going to start a true freshman quarterback. Iowa State losing 2 elite receivers. Colorado losing all the talent that they did, right? Baylor, are they for real? They were awful in the first half of last year. They got hot down the stretch. Which one are we getting? I think West Virginia is a funky one because there's a lot of excitement about Rich Rodriguez coming back and how he's going to do with that team after some great years at Jacksonville. I mean, every single team has something I can point to and go, well, no, they're not going to win the conference. But somebody has to, right? And week to week, it's what's going to make the Big 12. So, I mean, we got to remember, we got a 4-way tie for first place last year in this conference, which is absolutely nuts in its own right. And there's every reason to think, we'll see how the math turns out, that we could see that again. Because even the defending champions, you go, Cam Scadaboo's gone. I think Arizona State's kind of average in the trenches. I think they're okay. Is Sam Leavitt for real? Is Jordan Tyson for real? Can they just do this again where they play harder than everybody else? Like, it's such a fascinating conference because, and you're right, you go on a stretch where you win a bunch of those 50-50 one-score games, and all of a sudden you're sitting there at 8-9 wins. If your flaws get the best of you, and that's for any of these teams, not just Cincinnati, all of a sudden you're struggling. That's what happened. That's exactly what happened to Kansas last year. Kansas was a good football team with a bad record because they imploded every week in the last 5 minutes. That's how it went. Jalen Daniels just fell apart in the fourth quarter every week. But you could tell they were dangerous by the end of the year because that always swings. So it's a fun conference, man. I'm telling you. And I get why the over could be a solid bet because there's a UCF. I think you're better than UCF. I think you're better than Oklahoma State. I think that's a mess down there. Arizona, I'm with you. But then it's just picking off and, okay, you have to go out there and win the ball games. And, again, this first one is so big for me.
Yeah.
We don't have that I keep cutting you off, Niehaus, but we don't, like you mentioned your tier one. We have the same tier ones, me and you, but we only play Utah and it's on the road. So like, I like that part about our schedule, even though we don't play a bunch of crappy teams like say Houston does. Cause in my tier 3, which I have a 3 tier for the Big 12 this year, Houston plays every single team in tier 3 except themselves. Like they have a crazy schedule, which is kind of why I have them as a sleeper in addition to UC and TCU. Those are my 3 sleepers there.
But it's only a gravy schedule if you're a good football team.
Correct.
And Houston certainly was not that last year, and I still have plenty of questions about them, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Lily, I'm looking at the schedule. All right. And the 2 teams that you just said we're going to smoke no matter what, Kansas and Iowa State, those are the first 2. I'm kidding. I'm messing with you. Those are the first 2 conference games we have. So if we take care of Nebraska, which obviously is a huge if, are we thinking top 25? I mean, hey, we got BG, Northwestern State, Kansas, and Iowa State. I mean, there is a chance we could go 5-0. We have to be ranked.
We would be. That kind of was going to be a question I had for Dalton is like, so you're thinking 6, maybe 7 wins. And you also mentioned if we beat Nebraska, your opinion will change.
Yeah.
But say we beat Nebraska, there's a couple big Sorsby plays. We control the game how you would think a Satterfield team would control the game. The defense looks like physically matching Nebraska. Everything looks good, and we win by 3-7. If you just put your mind in that space, we're heading into week 2. Does Cincinnati enter that number 1 Big 12 sleeper talk to you at that point, or do you need to see a little more?
No, I'll need to see more than that because Nebraska, and I am optimistic on Nebraska's chances. They won't compete at the top of the Big Ten, but I think with their schedule, it's a big game for them too because their schedule sets up that if they hit their peak and Dylan Raiola was really good, they could win 9 or 10 games. I think Nebraska for the moment is on very equal ground with a lot of these Big 12 teams with, say, Iowa State and Kansas and Baylor and all these teams that seem to be on such equal ground. I think it's a good measuring stick level of competition, especially against a physical team with a good run defense. And Dylan Raiola is really, really good against zone coverage, and he's going to see a lot of it with Cincinnati across from him, right? So it's a big game for both teams. And I think more so, I don't think it's some sort of game that decides at-large playoff positioning necessarily, but I think it's a great measuring stick for both of them, right? Nebraska just made their first bowl game since 2018, which sounds ridiculous to say, but huge positive development, especially with a true freshman quarterback last year. Cincinnati's trying to get back to a bowl game, and like you said, maybe be a sleeper in the Big 12. It's a great measuring stick. And when you think about Cincinnati and you're talking top 25 and all that, if they start 1-0, they're going to start 3-0. And then you feel really good going into a bye week, and then a Kansas team that I will tell you, them and probably Colorado are the 2 teams that I have no idea what we're getting out of them. I have no clue this year. They're the 2 teams in the Big 12 where I'm like, whatever happens, man, because Kansas was a roller coaster last year and obviously Colorado losing all those guys. But no, it's a big game. And I think more so for me than, okay, even if they were to lose that game, if you go in there and you lose a tight game by a field goal, I still might feel a little differently and go, you know what? Maybe these were 2 pretty good football teams that played a really good game, right? Week 1, it's tough to make those overarching judgments after week 1, right? But I think they absolutely have a chance. And if they do win, then I go, okay, all right, fine. Like even last year, we have to remember last year's team started 5-2, and we're sitting there and what is it?
I remember
even the 2 losses, they shouldn't have. I didn't realize until this week. I went back and watched a lot of the tape again. Really should have been, you could argue they should have been 7-0, really, because there was no reason to lose the Pitt game, and the Texas Tech game got away from them, and they still had a chance to tie it. I mean, they were this close to starting 7-0 last year. So these things, once you get the momentum going, it can happen, absolutely. But this first game is fascinating to me.
Yeah, that Pitt game still haunts me in my dreams. I mean, we're like, Holstein, Eli Holstein. He ended up being pretty good, but if you're watching on YouTube, you see it on the famous Cincy blocks there on the right side. Big 12 sleeper. You mentioned a couple teams. Like you don't know what you're going to get out of Kansas or Colorado. Who is your Big 12 sleeper?
I think for me, if I was going with somebody outside of the four that I had mentioned that I think are at the top: Utah, Texas Tech, Arizona State, K-State. If I was going with one team outside of that, I really like what TCU has offensively with Josh Hoover, with Eric McAllister out there at receiver. They have an explosive offense that could really throw the football. And I just think it's like, to me, I know a lot of people are on Baylor, but I think TCU is getting slept on. They lost it. They blew a late lead, just like the Cincy Pitt game to UCF. They had a game where they didn't stop the run against Houston. They lost a razor-thin game to Baylor. The only game where they really got, I should say two. There was two games where they got smoked. The Houston game, which was inexcusable, and then the SMU game, and SMU was just better than them. I mean, that was a playoff team. What are you going to do? But I think TCU, with their offense and the way Josh Hoover can throw the football, I would probably pick them as like the team I'm keeping an eye on early on there. The only thing for them is I'm trying to see, is their out-of-conference schedule ridiculous? Oh, that's a fun first game, too. They have they're the first Belichick game. That's going to be a fun one, too. On Monday Night Football, the first Belichick game. And then they play SMU out of conference again. Can they get revenge in that game with SMU losing a lot of pieces? TCU is a team I'm looking at early in the season, especially they're out of conference, and going, okay, how good are they? Because they're another. I think the Carolina game is going to be a lot of pressure and a lot of noise in that game about Belichick and his first game there. And then the SMU game, they get it at home this time. We're going to know going into Big 12 play what TCU is made of. And if they're 3-0, I would almost guarantee you that they're going to be ranked going into Big 12 play.
All right, we got about 40 minutes in. Now, if we keep going, I know me and Lily can go hours plus, and then we're going to get a text from Chuck like, what in the world were you guys even talking about? So, Lily, one more question for Dalton before we go.
Yeah, I got a PFF question. So we talked a little about the special teams grades. When you're like, so you started at you've been there a while, you've done the grading and all that. When you're like, how does that work? Like, does one person get one game, or are people splitting up halves? Is there, like, how much is going on? Because I noticed last year, almost an hour or two after the game, the snap counts are up. Like I don't know if the grades are up yet, but like, how does that happen so fast?
Yeah, I think one thing that doesn't get mentioned enough is how many layers go into everything we do. And when it comes to just the base, getting the base stats entered in our system, we have a person on each side of the football. So let's say since he's playing Nebraska, we have one person on the Cincy offense, one on the Nebraska offense that's just charting who's on the field and their positions. Then we have two more people. One of them's grading Cincinnati offense, the other's grading Nebraska offense, and all of those things. So those things happen live. As you're watching the game, we're watching it too on maybe all of a 5-minute delay right after a drive ends, and we're going right through and going through everything we do. So there is a run of everything that happens live as the game is going. And then once we get the all 22 in, that all gets reviewed. So we get the grades actually reviewed in 3 different processes. We'll have one person on quarterbacks and receivers and coverage. We'll have one person looking at pass pro and pass rush, and then one person looking at the run game. So this goes through multiple sets of eyes. In college, it's a little slower because there's so many college games. So there's like some games, like NFL games, we turn around all the reviews and everything, clean slate done by noon the next morning. Right, by noon on Monday, NFL Sunday is done. College takes a little longer because there's so many games. So like you'll see some grades change midweek because there's some games we don't get to till like Tuesday or Wednesday. But the initial grades, that's done as the game is happening, and the expectation is that it's done pretty soon after the game is over in completion, right? But they go through multiple sets of eyes with the grades. So I mean that's really what it is. But on those Saturdays, some days 110 football games because we do FCS also. I mean, we got guys working. I've done 14, 16-hour days back when I was doing it, man. When I was doing great, I've had days back then when I was doing 3 games of grading on one Saturday. Yeah.
So how do you feel when someone like me logs on Twitter and says you're wrong? Like, how does that make you guys feel?
No, honestly, I mean,
fair.
look, it's something that, I don't want to, I think it's just one of those things where over the years where I think it just hasn't been said enough, the amount of work and the number of eyeballs and the process that goes into it and the number of hours that we have so many brilliant football people. I mean, we got former coaches, we've got former players, we've got guys who've been doing this for a long time. I mean, we have guys who've been with this company for 15 plus years and they're still doing it and they still love it, right? And they watch so much football constantly just for the love of breaking it down, right? I think it just doesn't get us. And listen, I get it. Sometimes people think we're wrong. If you do anything in the media business and you put anything public facing, there's going to be people who think you do it wrong. What I would rather do is just go on a platform and fine, let's talk about it. Like I'm not going to tell you you're wrong either. I don't have to do that. If there's we're allowed to disagree on things, right? This is just the grades are a product of what we saw on tape. And at the end of it, when they're finalized, what we saw on tape twice over. We're not the first cut. Yeah, we do it from the TV broadcast and we do as best as we possibly can on it. But when we get that all 22, there are things that get tweaked in every game, whether that's 2%, 3%, 5% of stuff. So, there's certain things you can't see without the end zone cam or something like that, right? It's just kind of that's the nature of football. It's why having the all 22 is so great. But no, look, anybody who wants to disagree, I'm open to any discussion. And especially me, I told you, I've been on that side. I was on that side for 4 years. So I'm not opposed. There are people who absolutely hate us and they don't want to hear it and any of that. And I go, look, even with them, if you ever want me on, chat about it. I'll chat about it. Sure. I'll watch the whole darn game. I watched at least 7 of last year's Cincinnati games over again before coming on here. I'm like, listen, I'm going to tell you what I see. I'm going to tell you what some of the facts and numbers are. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, well, if anybody disagrees with his under 6.5, go ahead and hit him up on. I'm just messing around. Well, I'm certainly a fan. And like Lily said, it is the classic thing on Twitter. Like, reply with the grades. So I know you guys do great work over there. I really appreciate you coming on, chatting the Bearcats with us. I mentioned it at the top of the show, but let everybody know at home how they can find you, where they can hear you, where they can see you, all that sort of stuff.
Absolutely. On Twitter, PFF_Dalton. That's my Twitter handle. The PFF NFL and college football show. I'm on both of those because this is a college show. I'll tell you, once we start that week 1, our episodes are really going to – we've been doing Mondays and Thursdays throughout the offseason. Our episodes are going to be our Tuesdays. We're going to preview a lot of the big games every college football week, obviously, Tuesdays at 1 o'clock. And then we go back over them Sunday morning with reviews of all the big games, Sundays at 9 a.m. before NFL starts. So Tuesdays and Sundays for the college show. And our first preview, we'll have 11 games for week 1. The week before, we're going to do the week 0, the big week 0 game. But week 1, we're previewing a whopping 11 games. I don't know if we hit 11 games. Maybe conference title. I don't even think that's 11, but 11 games we're doing week 1. Nebraska, Cincinnati is on the list. We are previewing that. So that is Tuesday, August. What's that first one? August 26th. August 26th. And actually, because I think it's because it's the Thursday. That'll be the very first game that we're previewing in that previews. Nebraska, Cincinnati is on there. Check it out. PFF College Football Show on YouTube. Myself and Max Chadwick.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on, talking some Bearcats with us. We'll probably be back for a couple more episodes before that first game against Nebraska. I know Chuck and Houdini got some good stuff cooking for you. And then hopefully a 4-man weave. We'll get all the guys on to talk a full season preview before, again, we take on the Cornhuskers. Well, that's it for everybody. Have a good night, everyone.